Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here. 2 days ago I witnessed a little bit of a kerfuffle on Twitter regarding my friend Larry Bundy Jr. who was angry that Watch Mojo had plagiarised his content. I watched both the videos in question, including Larry's original video about the worst selling consoles ever. Upon watching both videos, it became clear that Watch Mojo had more or less lifted sections of Larry's work and loosely reworded it. They even repeated some of his jokes regarding very specific games on devices even as obscure as the bloody Gizmondo. Because both videos are trying to be largely factual, Watch Mojo could have had the defence it was purely coincidental, on the basis that facts are public domain and that they'd have conducted the same research on the same topic. However, Larry stated this could not have been the case, because most of his resources were not available online, and secondly, he'd placed traps in his work. Things like personal guesstimations on figures and enhanced truths. This is the same strategy used in mapping and dictionaries to allow them the same level of protection. Once Watch Mojo had become aware of this, they kindly removed the video from YouTube, apologised for the incident and admitted they was at fault. Now let's take a look at why everyone is so annoyed with Watch Mojo, despite their apology. Normally, when a company is at fault, they would have a professional PR team in place to send an appropriate response to the aggrieved party. This is how I feel Watch Mojo should have responded. This most likely would have prevented the huge negative backlash they have received. Dear Mr. Bundy Jr., we have reviewed your complaint and have come to the decision that your concerns are justified. For this, we apologise profusely. We are removing the video from YouTube, and as a gesture of goodwill, once we have received the final balance of the revenue, we will forward the full amount to yourself. Watch Mojo prides itself on its honesty and transparency, so we will be implementing further measures to ensure this never happens again. We apologise for any inconvenience caused and will issue a public apology online. We wish you the very best with your channel and future endeavours. All the best, WatchMojo.com. Something like this would have de-escalated the situation before it had even began. In approximately 100 words, the problem would have been adequately resolved. Also to mention, Watch Mojo do turn around, if you include all of their channels, approximately $10 million per year. Therefore, the revenue of one video out of the 13,000 they've produced isn't going to dent them financially in any way, shape or form. Money isn't the real issue even here. The issue is how messily Watch Mojo have handled the entire situation. Instead of a simple apology, they responded with a 700-word essay, half apologising and half lecturing Larry for including the same protections as maps and dictionaries within his work. So, let me take one more look at the initial email response to Larry. I read this in my previous video, as you all know. However, there is one or two things I want to discuss further, as it's relevant to the further tweets and comments thereafter. Signing off a letter is extremely important, as that is supposed to bring closure to situations. Here's how Ash finished his very long letter. Thanks for contacting, apologies for the grief it may have caused you. It was a sincere and honest mistake that chalks up to our need to better train our team and implement filters for sources when they are video based. But, as a friendly suggestion, I would avoid publishing false info in your videos. The web is already full of that. Long term, your channel will fare better if you avoid that. But each to their own. I take issue with the but part of this apology. You don't apologise and then say but. That's just common courtesy and decency, that you don't finish an apology by starting the final sentence with but. You're basically refusing to accept fault by giving unsolicited advice at the end of an apology. Sorry, but it's more your fault than ours, because we didn't know you'd put safeguards up. You've wronged us more than we've wronged you. So why is Ash from Watch Mojo responding as though he's in a position of power, offering friendly, unsolicited advice? He's writing as though he's lecturing and telling people off like they're unruly students. If it's supposed to be an apology, then why are they telling people how they're supposed to conduct themselves? That doesn't sound like an apology to me. That sounds more like they're just annoyed that someone had the foresight to protect themselves against blood-sucking large companies. Great way to show integrity. Okay, so I covered all of this in my previous video in a slightly less coherent rant that time. 2 days ago, I was just perturbed that a good friend of mine had been wronged, and equally and as importantly, I wanted to highlight the problem to other YouTubers so they can use the same strategies as maps and dictionaries to protect their works too. I have no idea how often large channels plagiarise the work of smaller ones, yet go undetected. So I feel Larry's methods, which have been brought to light, can be used by more creators to stop larger organisations from pilfering and profiting off passionate individuals' work. This sort of content theft is probably common practice amongst certain organisations. However, this is just conjecture on my part based on my experiences over the last couple of days. So yeah, I aired my grievances, explained how I felt about it, and I'd assumed that was the end of it. This was until I had seen a comment from Dan Paradis, one of the voices behind the Watch Mojo videos. To be fair to him, he managed to give a more professional response on my video than Ash had to Larry's actual email. For those who have not read his comment, I'll read it now. Dan from Watch Mojo here. As the head of the video game department and the voice of the videos, I consider myself personally responsible for all of the content we produce in that category, and I am thusly responsible for the plagiarism found within the video in question, though I do believe the reasons behind the incident are innocent enough. In the end, this falls on me, so I will not attempt to excuse it or explain it away. Yesterday, I reached out and spoke to Larry Bundy Jr. in order to apologise personally. I am frustrated by the way this has played out. The plagiarism in our video was unacceptable, and I saw no reason to fire back in any way. When I arrived at work yesterday and found out about it, my goal was to reach out to Larry in order to explain the situation, how it happened, and to once again apologise for our error. My hope was not to offer excuses as to why the plagiarism was okay or not a big deal, but to explain how the mistake occurred and to assure Larry that there wasn't a conceded effort on the part of the in-house Watch Mojo staff to steal his work. My fellow employees and I have worked very hard to produce our content, and to find out that a video that's already been published contains swaths of plagiarism is a major disaster in my eyes and the eyes of the department full stop. That alone was heartbreaking and incredibly frustrating for us. So to find out the situation has continued to spiral out of control after I issued my apology, took down the video and spoke to Larry is disheartening to say the least. Needless to say, I do not have access to Watch Mojo's Twitter account, and this is not my company at the end of the day. I was surprised that a Watch Mojo employee had reached out to my tiny little channel. I pretty much said to him the exact same things I've highlighted in this video. The comment thread is pinned on the video if you wish to take a look, though I imagine most of you have seen it already. His second and third responses are on the same thread and are also very wordy if you want to look at them too. I'm just going to extract some of the key points he made. I realised the response looks bad on a number of levels, and the implications or insinuation that Watch Mojo would have kept the video up if the safeguards were not in place is especially damning. In other words, he is acknowledging the CEO is coming off somewhat like a Scooby-Doo villain. And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those pesky meddling kids. The next part of his message goes on about how they don't condone plagiarism, etc. Next he says, I want to stress that our goal, both textually and visually, is never to rip off, steal or pass off other people's content as our own. It's unethical and not something we would ever do willingly. Any channel that approaches us and tells us to stop using their stuff gets blacklisted as a source. We don't want to be in bad faith with anyone, even if they disagree with our policies or practices. However, I fully understand that smaller channels are not always comforted by a short credit and an explanation of fair use. The frustration is valid, and the fear that smaller channels might not have the clout to get videos with their content taken down is legit. My goal as the head of this department is to try to come to an amicable solution for anyone who raises any such issue. And to be 100% clear, plagiarism of uncredited content is grounds for takedown, every time. For me personally, I don't see how any small content creator would be happy with just a credit when this company is making so much money off the back of them and everyone else. I am glad he acknowledges the frustration is valid. I could be wrong here and speaking out of line, but I'm pretty sure that fair use is not that lax that all you have to do is credit someone without even needing to tell them you've used their footage or research. For example, my friend who runs a small channel called Games You Love. He highlighted to me that Watch Mojo used some footage from his channel that was shot in his home, without even requesting his permission first. All he got was a small credit. He wasn't even aware until he came across it himself. I can't advise whether this is legal or not. I'm just making a point of another person who is upset by this. Something I find most amusing about this whole situation is that one of the main gripes Watch Mojo brings up is being accused of being a big corporation. I find it alarming this is one of their main concerns rather than the subject matter at hand. Like Dan's final comment on my video. We're actually not a big corporation either, confused face. We have a lot of employees and are no longer a small channel by any means. But the company is almost entirely composed of hard-working young people who are trying to produce good content and have no desire to shit on the little guy. This is highlighted further when eventually even the CEO Ash, the most corporate job title you could ever give yourself, responds in a similar fashion regarding being called corporate. People are projecting a few things that aren't accurate. This idea that we're some corporation is funny. We've never raised a penny of funding, aren't corporately backed, etc. It's more like a family business. Later he says, I still think we're the unknown channel that has to prove itself. That made me really laugh. The 29th most viewed channel on the entirety of YouTube is claiming they're unknown and have to prove themselves. Unknown to who? Hands up in the comment section anyone who's not already heard of Watch Mojo before. Unless you mean you're small scale in comparison to companies like McDonald's for example. But you can't deny that within YouTube, Watch Mojo is one of the biggest dogs in the entire yard. In my opinion, no one has come to your defence because no one has been able to build any kind of emotional attachment to your channel. In your interview on TubeFilter about being a YouTube millionaire, you advised we give the viewers what they want, even if it meant adopting a contrarian outlook. I mean YouTube personalities, bloggers in brackets, are without a doubt the soul of YouTube, but most are too in-your-face, subjective and niche to adopt a wider audience. Basically, you've created a formula based on facts, only with no personalities involved. A fantastic strategy for your growth, but this is the reason no die-hard fans are jumping to your defence. I know you're not an actual corporation, but instead a Canadian-based privately held video content producer, publisher and syndicator. You also said in that interview, I take much pride in admitting that I have never shot or edited a single frame. But I love and get content. So from the get-go, I realised that you need a certain production matrix or formula with regards to researchers, writers, hosts, videographers, video editors, etc. So from the onset, we scaled up and today we have a team of 30 full-time salaried employees and another 100 part-time freelancers to reinforce and accelerate our production output. How can you make statements like this, but claim you're not corporate and more family run instead? It comes across that you're more interested in financial benefits of a successful YouTube channel and how much content can be mass generated. I feel there's nothing wrong with this, but you can't claim to be wholesome and family run in one breath and a big mechanized company turning over millions of dollars in the next. I feel it's completely inconsistent. It comes across as though you're this fat cat millionaire CEO who's allowed to talk down to his lessers. You're trying to be as personable and accessible as possible by responding personally. However, you're just not really that relatable to us and comes across as somewhat condescending. Although I commend you for personally trying to deal with this matter and even reaching out to me in my own comment section. But let me offer you some friendly, unsolicited advice. Since you're a fan of such services. If I was a company turning over millions of dollars, I'd set some money aside to hire someone to handle company PR, instead of trying to deal with it myself and making a complete pig's dinner out of the whole thing. Now, let's take a quick look at Twitter, because there's a couple of doozies on there too. Here is a prime example of how not to tweet. In one tweet, they're being very civil and quite professional, and then moments later post something very snide, as though no one was going to notice. Really? Oh dear. One might think that perhaps someone's patience is being tested. How dare the internet be annoyed with us? We weren't really even that wrong. We really begrudged having to apologise to Larry. Right, so in this one, they're just essentially trying to humiliate Larry. Why? Because Larry offered them an olive branch? Are they really that out of touch with reality and so obsessed with trying to make it look like they've done nothing wrong that they do that? Now let's look at this tweet. Why on earth even post this? I genuinely feel you don't have a clue how to handle situations on a professional level at all, Watch Mojo. The level of actual ridiculousness is sky high here. Larry offering you the opportunity to purchase his research instead of stealing it from him is not Larry coming to you with his tail between his legs like an abused dog. That's him giving you the opportunity to pay for his services. You clearly like his research if you're prepared to poach it from his channel in the first place, whether knowingly or not. Stop trying to make him look bad when you're the one who've made a mistake. The constant condescension and electronic verbal diarrhea in play here is outrageous. Why couldn't Watch Mojo just accept defeat graciously, rather than keep trying and failing at taking the moral high ground? So, apologies to my regular viewer base, as I have no intention of making a habit out of making this kind of content. It just hit very close to home, and these shenanigans whereby big companies use loopholes to suck the life out of passionate individuals is completely unacceptable in my opinion. The retro gaming community is just that, a community. I will defend my fellow content creators from being mugged off by income-obsessed large corporate mosquitoes. My next video all about the Game Boy Advance will be out very soon. So if you want to blame someone for causing me to put a hold on my usual content, then blame Watch Mojo for aerating me. Cheerio! Thank you for watching today's video. As stated, regular content will resume very soon. In the meantime, please let me know if you or anyone you know have had any content lifted from them by large channels. It's time we all stood together to put an end to the corporate pillaging of the common man. Yeah. Ta-ta and farewell.